The race ended, and then the FIA unleashed chaos. What happened after Miami shocked the entire grid, a wave of penalties so brutal, it didn't just punish mistakes. It rewrote the Grand Prix. 9 sanctions. Multiple drivers hit. Results changed hours later. And here's what makes this insane. Some of these penalties came from things nobody saw. A tire, just millimeters over a line. A car, just 2 millimeters outside the rules. A final lap, pushed just slightly too far. That's all it took. And if something that small can destroy an entire race weekend, then right now, every single driver on the grid is at risk. At first, it didn't feel insane. Cars crossed the line, drivers slowed down, and everything looked exactly the way you would expect after a race weekend. Positions locked. Results on the screen. Teams already thinking ahead. It felt finished. But it wasn't. Because while everyone believed Miami was over, the FIA was still working behind the scenes. Reviewing every lap. Rechecking every onboard. Analyzing every detail with more precision than anyone had during the race itself. And that's where everything starts to change. Because this wasn't one penalty. This was a chain reaction. It began quietly, almost unnoticed. During sprint qualifying, results were already being altered after the session ended. Lap times deleted, positions reshuffled, drivers dropping down the order minutes after thinking they were safe. Alex Albon was the first to feel it. He thought he had advanced, until the FIA erased his lap for track limits and pushed him down the grid. That was the first crack. But almost nobody realized how big this would become. Because then came the sprint. Kimi Antonelli crossed the line in third. A huge moment. A breakthrough result. And then, it vanished. A penalty applied after the race dropped him to 6th. Just like that. No fight. No defense. No second chance. And suddenly, something feels different. Because now, the finish line doesn't mean the result is final. It means, it's waiting. Waiting to be confirmed. Waiting to be reviewed. Waiting to be changed. But even that wasn't the real breaking point. Because the moment that truly changed everything didn't happen on track. It happened in inspection. A detail so small, it doesn't even feel real. 2 millimeters. That's all it took. Hadjar's car, disqualified. Not because of a crash. Not because of a mistake you could see. But because it was just slightly outside the rules. And in that moment, the entire paddock understood something uncomfortable. You can do everything right, and still lose everything, later. And that realization started to spread. Quietly. But fast. Because if Miami is being controlled like this, then what comes next is even bigger. And this is where everything truly explodes, because the main race looked calm. On the surface, nothing seemed out of place. Drivers crossed the line. Positions looked secure. The story of Miami felt complete. But it wasn't. Because while the podium celebrations were happening, the FIA was building a completely different version of that race. One review at a time. One detail at a time. One decision after another. Take Verstappen. No warning during the race. No visible mistake. Nothing that suggested a problem. He finishes, steps out of the car, everything looks settled. Until the FIA goes back, finds new camera angles, and sees something nobody caught live. A tire, just slightly over the pit exit line. Not aggressive. Not obvious. But enough. 5 seconds added, after the race. And suddenly, something invisible becomes official. But that wasn't even the biggest shock. Because then came the moment that changed everything. Leclerc. Final lap. Pressure building. Light rain making the track unpredictable. He's fighting to hold position. Pushing. Crossing the line in 6th. It looks done. It feels done. But hours later, it isn't. The FIA reviews every corner of that final lap. Every track limit. Every inch of asphalt used. And then the decision comes. A drive-through penalty, converted into 20 seconds added to his race time. And just like that, he drops to 8th. 2 positions gone. Points lost. The race, rewritten. Now stop for a second. Because this is where the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. This isn't one penalty. This isn't bad luck. This is a system. Because both of these decisions came after the race was already over. No warning. No chance to react. No way to recover. And that changes everything. Because during the race, drivers can adapt. They can fix mistakes. They can give positions back. But after the race, there is nothing. No control. No second chance. And that's where the real danger begins. Because now every driver understands something they didn't fully feel before. Crossing the finish line doesn't mean it's over. And this is where the chaos turns into something much more dangerous, because once you step back and connect everything, Miami stops looking like a wild weekend. And starts looking like a warning. Because it wasn't just Verstappen. It wasn't just Leclerc. It was everywhere. Across every session. Across every team. Across every moment where something could be measured and judged later. Qualifying changed after review. The sprint changed after penalties. The race changed after the finish. And even then, it still wasn't over. Russell was still under investigation after everything else had already happened, with the possibility of another decision still hanging in the air. Now think about that. Even after multiple penalties, even after results were already rewritten, there was still uncertainty. That's not normal. That's something new. Because what Miami revealed isn't just strict enforcement. It's constant enforcement. A system that doesn't stop. A system that keeps looking, even when everything appears finished. And that system is precise. Uncomfortably precise. We're talking about millimeters. A tire barely crossing a line. A car just outside a technical limit. A corner taken just slightly too wide. Details no driver can fully judge in real time, at full speed, under pressure. And yet, every one of those details is being captured, stored, analyzed, and judged later, with more clarity than the driver ever had in the moment. That's the shift. Because Formula One has always been about pushing limits. Living on that edge where performance meets risk. But Miami changed that balance. Now, the edge is invisible. Because you don't always know when you've crossed it. Not in the moment. Not from inside the car. Only later. When the FIA reviews everything again, with better tools, better angles, better data. And by then, it's already too late. So what happens next? Drivers start to adapt. They leave margins. They avoid pushing that extra fraction. They think twice before using every inch of the track. And those tiny changes? Cost time. Small at first. Almost unnoticeable. But over a lap, over a race, over a season, they add up. That's how performance disappears. Not through one big mistake, but through constant, invisible compromises. And that's why Miami matters so much. Because this wasn't just a race full of penalties. This was a demonstration. A message. Everything will be checked. Everything will be measured. Everything will be judged. Even after the race is over. And if that's the reality now, then one thing becomes impossible to ignore. In this version of Formula One, you're not just racing your rivals. You're racing a system that never stops watching. And now we reach the part that changes everything, because this doesn't end in Miami. This follows every driver, into every single race from this point forward. Because once a system like this is established, you can't ignore it. You can't race the same way again. You can't trust that what happens on track is the final version of reality. Think about the next race. Same drivers. Same pressure. Same need to push to the absolute limit. But now, with something extra in their minds. That final lap from Leclerc. That invisible line from Verstappen. That disqualification over just 2 millimeters. Those moments don't disappear. They stay. And they change decisions. Because before Miami, the mindset was simple. Push as hard as possible, and deal with consequences if they come. Now, everything is different. Push, but calculate. Attack, but leave margin. Defend, but don't cross the line. And that balance is almost impossible to master. Because if you leave too much margin, you lose speed. If you lose speed, you lose positions. If you lose positions, you lose points. But if you push too far, Miami happens again. That's the trap. And every single team is now inside it. But here's where it becomes even more intense. Not all teams will react the same way. Some will become cautious. Some will hesitate under pressure. Some will lose that instinct that separates the best from the rest. And others will try to adapt. Will try to find that perfect line between aggression and precision. And those teams will have the advantage. Because this is no longer just about speed. It's about surviving a system that never stops watching. A system where every move is recorded. Every detail is stored. Every action can be judged later, with more clarity than any driver has in the moment. That's what Miami created. A second race. A hidden one. One that begins when the checkered flag falls. Where results are still alive. Still vulnerable. Still at risk. And that changes the psychology of Formula One completely. Because drivers are no longer just racing each other. They're racing uncertainty. A system that waits. A system that reviews. A system that always has the final word. So what did the FIA really create in Miami? Not just stricter rules. Not just more penalties. They created a new way to win. Because now, winning isn't just about crossing the line first. It's about surviving everything that comes after it. And until that moment arrives, no result is final. No position is safe. And no driver is ever completely in control. And here's the final piece, The one that turns everything we've seen into something much bigger than just one chaotic weekend. Because Miami didn't just create controversy, it changed what it means to win in Formula One. For years, the checkered flag was the end. That was the moment everything became real. Locked. Final. But now, that moment doesn't exist in the same way anymore. Because Miami proved something no team can ignore. The race doesn't end when the drivers stop. It ends when the FIA is done reviewing. Think about that. A driver can execute a perfect race, manage tires, defend under pressure, cross the line in position, and still lose everything later. Not because of a visible mistake, not because of something dramatic, but because of a detail so small, it only exists in slow motion. Frame by frame, angle by angle, measured with precision no driver can access in real time. That's the new reality. And that reality changes the entire championship. Because now, it's not just about being the fastest. It's about being flawless, in a system where perfection is judged after the fact. Now imagine the end of the season. 2 drivers, separated by just a few points. Everything comes down to one race. One crosses the line ahead, celebrates, believes it's over. And then, hours later, a review, a penalty, a decision that rewrites everything. That scenario isn't impossible anymore. Miami proved it. And that's why this moment matters more than any single penalty. Because this isn't just about what happened. It's about what can happen, from now on. In every race. In every battle. In every championship fight. Because the FIA has shown that the final word doesn't belong to the track. It belongs to the review. To the data. To the angles nobody saw in the moment. And that creates something Formula One has never truly had at this level. Uncertainty after the finish. A tension that doesn't end with the race. A pressure that follows drivers into the garage, into the debrief, into the hours after everything seems done. Waiting. Watching. Knowing that something could still change. And for the drivers, that's the hardest part. Because they're no longer just racing each other. They're racing a system that can take everything away, after they thought they had secured it. And that changes how you drive. How you defend. How you attack. How far you're willing to go when everything is on the line. Because now, the question isn't just, can you win? It's something much more uncomfortable. If you do win, will it still be yours later? And that is the real legacy of Miami. Not the chaos. Not the number of penalties. But the shift. The moment Formula One stopped being decided only on track. And started being decided after it. Because from this point forward, crossing the finish line isn't the end. It's just the beginning of the final judgment.